Father, we thank you for Jesus, our great salvation. And thank you for the grace that transforms sinners, that changes the way we think and the way we live and move and have our being. And we thank you tonight and take our place, all of us as sinners, except for the grace of God, there go we. And we humble ourselves before you, mighty God. And we ask you tonight to prepare us to be able to turn to the generation coming up and be able to equip them and help them and assist them to navigate through the waters of this culture and what we deal with today. Father, help us tonight. Let this not only be informative, but create in us a burden to pray and to pass the baton to the generation coming up. We love our kids, Lord. We thank you for every child in this building tonight, in Frontline, every younger child in children's ministry. Lord, we just thank you for our children. And we thank you that tonight is not about us, it's about them. But more importantly, Lord, it's about your glory. So glorify your Son tonight in all that's said and done. In Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen. You may be seated. I think everybody knows me, but I'm Neil Silverberg, the lead elder here at Trinity Chapel. And normally this is my Wednesday night Bible study. We are going through the Old Testament right now, but tonight is a special night, as you know. We invited you here for this. By the way, tonight I opened the meeting not as a lead pastor, but as a parent. I am the parent of 3 boys. My oldest son is 25, my middle son is 20, and I have a high schooler, a senior at Carnes, who's in Frontline. He's here tonight, David. And so I'm here tonight not only as a leader in the church, but as a parent. And we're all here tonight because of our kids, and we're concerned that they be properly equipped to handle what the world is dishing out to them. And I want you tonight, we're doing this tonight for parents because we have a great need to be properly equipped to know how to handle what our kids are dealing with, particularly the dangers of an online world and what's happening in our world. How many of you older folk, I include myself, have some sense that the world our kids are living in today is vastly different than the world we grew up in? Technology is a blessing, and it also opens our children to incredible dangers. For those of you who might not know, and I doubt that's true, but just so we're all on the same page, I downloaded this article about sexting and what our kids deal with, but particularly what parents need to know. It says parents may never heard of it, but surveys show that 20 to 60% of teens are doing it, sexting. While this troubling trend continues full speed ahead, parents, teachers, and lawmakers are struggling to react appropriately to the phenomenon that puts kids at risk for exploitation and harassment. What is sexting? A combination of the words sex and text messaging. Sexting is the sending of sexually provocative messages or visual images to and from cell phones and computers. Kids as young as 9 may be doing it, according to the research of Susan Lipkins, a psychologist specializing in bullying and hazing. Some teens and young adults use sexting to flirt, others to have fun, still others to gain recognition, improve their social status, or hurt or harass. Sometimes it's gossip, sometimes it's a mating call, sometimes it's sexual harassment. And I read this to the church a couple of weeks ago, but I want to read it to you for those who didn't hear it. But according to a recent study, the percent of teenagers who have sent or posted nude or semi-nude pictures or videos of themselves, 20% of teenagers overall, 22% of teen girls, 18% of teen boys, 11% of young teen girls ages 13 to 16. The percent of teenagers sending or posting sexually suggestive messages, 39% of all teenagers, 37% of teen girls, 40% of teen boys. We're not hosting this meeting tonight because we're just dealing with what we hear is in the culture. We are presently dealing with this at Trinity Chapel. Our leadership, we are dealing with it, and we are involved in this process. Remember two things, and then I'm going to invite Dave to come up. What must we do as parents? Number one, I want to reiterate this, and if you're in my studies, you've heard this over and over. But whatever our kids are dealing with outwardly, whatever pressures are upon them from the culture and media, remember as parents that their ability to deal with it effectively it begins in the heart. And therefore, it begins with the gospel. We all need to be better parents. We all need to be informed. We all need to be protective and hold our kids accountable. But first and foremost, we must shepherd their hearts through the gospel, because only the gospel can change our kids so that they are prepared for this onslaught. And secondly, and that's why we're hosting this meeting tonight and have asked Chaplain Dave and Mary to come, we as parents need to be very aware of the dangers that our kids face when we indiscriminately hand them smartphones and internet connections and don't hold them accountable. We need to be aware of who our kids are texting, who they are receiving texts from, what internet sites they visit, and so forth and so on. So we felt that it would be appropriate, because we're dealing with this in our church and because it's part of our culture, to ask some people involved in this hands-on in our culture to come and address us as parents. I wish the weather was better. I'm sure it kept some away, but I'm glad you're here tonight. And so I'm going to ask a dear friend to come. His name is Chaplain Dave Trent. I've known Dave since probably early 2000s. I can't remember when I first met him, but I remember when he began, I think it was in 2004, he began the Royal Chaplain Corps. He is the General Chaplain of the Royal Chaplain Corps. On their website, it says the purpose of the Royal Chaplain Corps is that the gospel is to take the gospel to all peoples. And they do that through chaplaincies. Dave works closely with the Knox County Juvenile Court. He works with troubled youth. He is involved with families, and he works with kids. And with him tonight is Mary Lindsay. She'll be introduced by Dave. In fact, I'm going to have Dave come now. We'll welcome him, and then he'll introduce Mary, who's going to speak first. Let's welcome Chaplain Dave Trent.
I'm on. Wow. Well, thank you for having us here. We are honored to be here. I want to read to you just a quick scripture, and then I'm going to introduce to you Mary. James 1:14-15 says, "But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death." Each man is drawn away by these things. The Greek term there means a decoy, like a duck decoy, when ducks are flying overhead and they see these false ducks, and then they come down and then they're enticed, which means to be hooked in. And then when it matures, it brings forth death. Unfortunately, in the line of work that we do, we see a lot of death, not just physical death. I'm also the guy to knock on your door to say you lost your child. And so see a lot of death. But there is a death that is a natural death, and there is a spiritual death, and then there is just this emotional death. And so tonight what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the reality of sexting, the reality of being bullied via the internet. And this is really new territory. The courts are trying to catch up right now with what's been going on the last 3 to 5 years. Technology is rampant. It's amazing. So I come from a family of 14 kids. Mary comes from a family of 13 kids. I have 7 children myself. I have 7 kids, and you know the typical question is, don't you know what causes that? Yes, we do, and my wife and I are not willing to give that up right yet. But tonight what we are going to do is we're going to talk to you about the reality that is facing all of us. And it's a very real reality, and it's sad. And how do we protect our kids? How do we shelter them, engage them? And how do we help navigate them through the waters? Because I'm going to tell you on the front side, we're not going to put a stop to it, but we've got to navigate through it. And so that's what we're going to do. Mary's been with the court system for 14 years. She's married to a police officer in Knox County Sheriff's Department. I met Mary back in 2004. Mary had just over the last several years had lost her father and her mother. They've gone to be with the Lord. She's always generous to me when I come in. She's always got open arms. And she really knows the court system. And she truthfully cares about the children she serves. Now, one thing I want to tell you, just because she's small in body and stature, trust me, this woman is a tower house when it comes to dealing with kids and able to just put her finger. No, that won't happen. Every kid that comes in, she will treat as though it's her own. And trust me, they will walk a line, okay? So, Mary Lindsay, will you come up? And she's going to talk to you. And then when she gets done for about 20, 25 minutes, then I'll come up and we'll conclude.
Well, my name is Mary Lindsay, and not to correct too much, but I have been with the court 18 years, not 14. I do have 2 children. I have a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old, so certainly I have dealt already with some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. What I do at the court is I coordinate the court's first offender program. So what I deal with are children that usually come into the court, obviously for the first time, hence in the name, first offender, on misdemeanor charges that they're before the court on. And that's a type of informal adjustment process in which the offender has the opportunity, if they can abide by all the conditions of the court, to work themselves back to a clean record. The other task that I am charged with is that I'm the supervisor over the intake unit, and that unit processes all the petitions for our court. Tonight we're going to talk about not just the sexting part, but I'm also going to include cyberbullying, because I think that's something that we certainly have been dealing more with up to this point than the sexting. The sexting is starting to come on, but I think the cyberbullying has kind of been there for a little bit longer. Social media has certainly been the means of communication for today's generation of young people. Today's teens communicate with one another and the world through digital technology venues such as Facebook, Twitter, and MySpace. Most teens are more comfortable with documenting their every move online, so you know exactly what they're doing at every moment of the day, because every 5 minutes they're telling you what they're doing. Posting photos, updating their status messages, sharing texts, and being a click away from their friends are certainly the norm for young people today. These social media venues have, for a lot of young people, even replaced the use of emails, which used to be the face. So you see how quickly, through the use of technology, we're moving from one thing to another, because young people today don't email. I send my kids emails at college, and they never respond. I have to text them in order for them to go and check their email. Mom, I don't check my email. Why don't you just text that to me? No, I sent it in an email. I still email. Check your email. So, you know, that is just, you know, the difference in how we communicate. My kids will text for 30 minutes back and forth before they will pick up the phone and call you and have just a normal conversation. It's really strange, but it's here to stay, and we're going to have to get on board with that. And it's not the social media that is necessarily the problem. The problem arises is that you've got these young persons that are using this social media who have a lack of maturity and certainly a lack of life experience, and they're going to make impulsive decisions when they're on these social media sites. You know, somebody sends them something, do this, do that. You know, they're getting messages from friends. They're being influenced to do things that maybe necessarily they wouldn't do, but, you know, at that particular moment, they may be likely to do something, and once you push enter, go, it's gone, and they can't get it back. And that's why it's very important that parents talk to their children of all ages about the proper use of these social media sites and monitor their child's usage. In raising my children, there was no such thing as I'm invading your privacy, okay? I don't believe in that. You know, I will, you know, go through everything. I go through backpacks. I went through, closets. I went through drawers. I went through your special boxes. There's nothing going to be too sacred, because there's nothing more sacred than your children. That's exactly. And parents cannot talk to their children about something they have no knowledge about. So parents, if your kids have Facebooks, you've got to have a Facebook, because you need to have that profile so you can friend your child. Okay, do you all know about that? Okay, so that way you can get on your friend's site or your child's site and see exactly who they're talking to, what they're talking about, and what is actually going on in all of their lives. And certainly, you need to let your children know right up front that you want to know and that you need to know about their use of this technology, and you should ask about their daily usage. And have a standing rule in your house. If they're going to have a Facebook, or they're going to have a Twitter account, or they're going to have any of these things, that you are going to require your child and you are going to friend each other on these sites. And that is the only way that you're going to allow that they be on these sites. And that will provide a check and balance system that will allow you to, like I said, look on those sites and keep up to date as to what they're doing, okay? And this is not just important for younger children, but teens as well. And I'm not saying it's more important to look at younger children, keep up with younger children, and less with teens, or vice versa. I think it's just as important to stay on top of it all the time, because your kids will surprise you sometimes. I have parents all the time that come in my office and say, but we never had any problems with our child until this incident happened. And then we start interviewing, and then we start looking back at stuff, and I'm like, really? You just didn't know. You just didn't know it was going on until this happened. So have a conversation with your child about their lives in the social media world. Ask about anything they have written on Facebook, or if they have had any recent chats. In return, talk about your child's daily uses of social media, so to initiate a conversation about your child's own online habits. So if you're on Facebook, talk about how you were on Facebook today, and blah, 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 and, this was going on with so-and-so. And then you kind of initiate your child talking about their online use for that particular day. Always, always, always have a computer in a public place in your home. And I know, since personal computers have been in homes, that has always been something that professionals have always said. Don't allow your children to have computers in their room. Don't allow your children to have computers where you can't see what they're doing. Hey, they're savvy. You think you're going to walk in the room and catch them? You don't know where they've just been, because they're done out of it. In the second they heard that creak on the floor and you about to open that door, they've done got off all those sites because they knew you were coming. Okay, so you need to put that computer where you can view it, watch it. People are going to frequently walk by, and that is so very important. Children, well, I kind of covered that a minute ago. Keep an open dialogue with other parents about what their children are doing, and so that you know what's going on with other parents' children, then even if your child is not particularly doing that at that particular time, they may be doing it next week. So, you kind of staying a little ahead of the game on that. When discussing with your kids about the use of good judgment, also mention the consequences for poor judgment. This certainly could range from minor punishment to possible legal action in the case of sexting or bullying. Discourage your children from gossiping, spreading rumors, bullying, or damaging someone's reputation through the use of texting or social media. The more private your children make their site, the less likely they will to receive inappropriate material. So check on those limits, see what their privacy settings are. Okay, know who they have allowed to be friends with on those sites. They may have friends on their Facebook that you have forbidden them to have any contact with. So know who those people are. and keep up with that on a regular basis. And of course, if you're a friend on those sites with your children, you're able to look at that on a daily basis. Okay? Set limits for internet and cell phone usage. Learn the warning signs by watching your child's behavior. If their activities change, they're no longer interested in the things that they used to be interested in. They're skipping activities, they're skipping meals, they're skipping doing homework to spend more time on these social internet sites. You're going to start seeing that through their grades are going to drop, and certainly they're going to probably gain or lose weight. So you need to check their chat logs, their emails, their files, and social networking profiles for any inappropriate content, friends, messages, and images, and do so on a regular basis. And don't wait, again, till it becomes a huge problem. Let your children know what you are doing. There's no reason, parents, that you have to sneak around your children, okay? You know, that's probably the worst thing you can do is have secrets in your household. Let your children know what you're doing. As I said in the beginning, let your children know that you want and that you need to know about their use of this technology and about their daily usage, okay? And as far as, you know, again, that rule of if you're going to have this site, we're going to friend each other, okay? And the new problem, and I think the main topic of tonight was the sexting, and that certainly is, there have been some laws that have been amended and changed a little bit to address this issue, as it's certainly been becoming more prevalent. And sexting refers to sending sexually explicit messages or a text message with pictures of children or teens that are inappropriate, naked, or engaged in sex acts. A recent survey shows 20 to 60% of boys and girls have sent such messages. They do this in an effort to show off, to show interest in someone, or to prove some kind of commitment. In a technological world where everything can be copied, sent, posted, and seen by huge audiences, there is no such thing as being able to control this information once you've sent it. Can't get it back, you can't change it, it's gone. And it doesn't matter what your intention is. So for a young girl to send an explicit photo of herself to a boyfriend has allowed everyone to see her most intimate self. The sender always ends up feeling humiliated. The emotional pain that it causes for the child is enormous. And it also does so for the sender and the receiver, and often with harsh legal consequences for both. Parents must engage in the conversation of sexting, again, before there is a problem and as soon as the child is able to have a cell phone. If you think your 9-year-old is mature enough to have a cell phone, then your 9-year-old should be mature enough for you to sit down and have a real conversation about the use of that cell phone, or don't give him or her a cell phone. I mean, that's bottom line. Children must understand that sexting is serious, and there are laws in place that make it a crime in many jurisdictions across the country, including Tennessee. And this could mean involving the police, suspension from school, and a permanent record that could prevent your child later getting into certain colleges and to get certain jobs. Teach your children that if someone sends them an inappropriate picture, that they should delete it immediately. They should not distribute it. They should not show anyone. They should not talk about it. They should delete it. If they send it on, they then are distributing pornography, and that is against the law. And many children across the country right now are facing charges that are ranging anywhere from misdemeanor to felonies. And as of July the 1st of 2011, the state of Tennessee may punish you with jail time or fines should you send or display an image online, which includes social networks such as Facebook and Twitter, that has the possibility to frighten, intimidate, or cause emotional distress to anyone who sees it. And the exact language of the law, I'm going to kind of go over that, and I know it's a little boring, but then I'll sum it up at the end and hopefully make better sense out of it. A person who commits an offense who intentionally communicates with another person or transmits or displays an image in a manner in which there is a reasonable expectation that the image will be viewed by the victim, by telephone, in writing, or by electronic communication without legitimate purpose, with the malicious intent to frighten, intimidate, or cause emotional distress, or in a manner the defendant knows or reasonably should know would frighten, intimidate, or cause emotional distress to a person of reasonable sensibilities. As the result of the communication, the person is frightened, intimidated, or emotionally distressed. Tennessee Code annotated 49.6.10.14 through 49.6.10.19 were amended by deleting the language. It used to say harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and basically all they did was they used those three words, but then added the cyberbullying to that as well. So we're going to talk about the cyberbullying just a little bit here in just a second. And Section 2 of the 49.6.10.14 was further amended following as a new appropriately designated subdivision, stating that all of that is done through the use of telephones, cellular phones, or other wireless telecommunication devices, PDAs, computers, electronic mail, instant messaging, text messaging, and websites by students in a manner that is safe and secure, which obviously is essential to a safe and civil learning environment and is necessary for the students to successfully use technology. Tennessee Code 49.6.10.15 is amended by deleting the section in its entirety and by substituting instead the following. As used in Tennessee Code 49.6.10.14, this section and 49.6.10.16 through 49.6.10.19, cyberbullying is done through the undertaking through the use of electronic devices. Electronic devices is defined to include, but is not limited to, telephones, cellular phones, or other wireless telecommunication devices, PDAs, computers, electronic mail, instant messaging, text messaging, and websites. Harassment, intimidation, or bullying means any act that substantially interferes with a student's educational benefits, opportunities, or performance, and if the act takes place on school grounds, and this is part A of that, if the act takes place on school grounds, at any school-sponsored activity, on school-provided equipment or transportation, or at any official school bus stop, the act has the effect of physically harming a student or damaging student's property, knowingly placing a student or students in reasonable fear of physical harm to the student or damage to the student's property, causing emotional distress to a student or students, or creating a hostile educational environment. Now, Bill 301 was amended to include Section B. That was Section A that I just read to you. Section B, which was the amended part that was amended in May of 2011, also includes that if the act takes place off of school property or outside of a school-sponsored activity and is directed specifically at a student or students and has the effect of creating a hostile educational environment or otherwise creating a disruption to the educational environment or learning process. So what all that means is you've got the cyberbullying, you've got the harassment, you've got the intimidation, you've got the sexting. So all of those things, through any of those forms of communication that we talked about, the use of all those different devices that can be used, it doesn't matter if it was on school property when it was done or it wasn't on school property. If it's brought into the schools because you're harassing on Facebook, and then that obviously is going to come into the school, and it creates problems in the school setting, the schools can take action. Okay? So that means your kid may get suspended for something they didn't do at school. They may be at school every day doing what they're supposed to do every day at school. Okay? But they have created such a hostile environment at school through their inappropriate use of these social medias that the school is forced to take action. And, if you watch the news this week even, certainly, and last week, there have been several cases on the evening news, across the country. There have been several different incidences happening of where these bullying incidences that have happened, not just at school, but things that have occurred off school property. And, these children have reached a breaking point. And, it's unfortunate that somebody wasn't able to get to the victim in time enough to address some of these issues. But more importantly, that somebody didn't get to the bullies in time to address the issue before something bad happened. And so basically, in summary, what I want to just get across to you today is your children may be model citizens when they're offline, but they make big mistakes when they're online. And, again, it all goes back to their maturity level, their lack of life experience. It's not because they're bad little people. It's just they just don't have it in them to make appropriate decisions all the time. That's why they need you to supervise them. They're not going to tell you necessarily they want you to supervise them, but they'll appreciate it that you do. So, talk to your children about being responsible, having responsible behavior in their emails, their text messaging, their video chatting, and their social networking. Stay on top of what's going on in your child's daily lives. Have many small conversations with your child. If you can just have a moment to have a 5-minute conversation here and a 5-minute conversation there, have as many small conversations with your children as you can. It doesn't have to be this formal conversation that you sit down and have with your kid. Just talk to your children all the time, and you certainly will have then a better idea of what's going on in their social life, okay? Because they're going to want to talk to you then, okay? Because, it's not new and different to them if you don't have this dialogue going on, and then all of a sudden you get suspicious about something, and you're like, so what? What's been going on? What happened at school today? Hey, that's a red flag. They see that coming, and they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to you because that's not something you do. And if that's not something you do, on a regular basis, they're not going to be willing to talk to you when there's problems going on. And so that's just key. It's really important. If you learn your child is dating and engaging in sexual behavior, have a serious talk about sex and include the topic of sexting. Also address the issue of bullying, the use of text messages to harass or humiliate others. This is so huge, and it really needs to be addressed. There should never be a reason that everybody should be able to. Your children should have an appreciation for all people. It doesn't matter where they came from, where they live, what they look like, what they wear. We need to teach our children to appreciate people because people are different, and we need to have appreciation for people's differences. Certainly the whole idea of this social media, it's not an isolated trend, and in order for you all to keep your children safe, you're going to have to, again, send that message and emphasize that message to your children of responsibility. Explain the risk, not only to their reputations, but also the risk also legally, the repercussions that could be there if they cross that line into doing some of the things that we've talked about tonight. And keep that line of communication open with your children. Remind your children that no matter what the social pressure is, to engage in inappropriate behavior, such as this inappropriate phenomenon that's going on with the sexting and the harassment and the bullying and such that goes on through Facebook and such, the potential of the social humiliation can be 100 times worse for them. I thank you for your time tonight, and I'm going to bring back up Dave Trump. Thank you.
Years ago, when I was dating my wife, we didn't have cell phones. You all identify with that. We had pay phones. And while I dated her, I'd put the quarters in, and I remember we would talk, and I'd call, and she would get the phone, and I'd say, collect call. She'd say, no, not accepting it, and she'd call back. You all know the routine. And we were so in love at that time, we just taken away. And if I could have carried that payphone with me, the whole booth, it would have came with me wherever I went, right? All right. The reality is that if I had had what our kids have today, but by the grace of God, there go I. What we don't deal with is the reality is that men are stimulated by sight and women by emotions. Young men from age 12 to 21, they don't think with the prefrontal cortex of the brain. This is the thing that says, okay, wait a minute. If I do this, there's a consequence here. Okay? They think from the limbic system, which is all passion and risk. Most guys have it when they're younger, but when we get older, we say, nah, let the young guys handle that, right? Okay. And then what ends up happening is that I don't let my son who's 9 play with a weapon. I was on a call one time where I got the call from the chief, and I went out to see it. It was where a young man had shot and killed his sister. He was 9 years of age when he shot and killed his 13-year-old sister. And they were waiting for me to get there to pretend like they were still working on him or her to keep her alive until I could get there to give mom and dad the news that your daughter is dead. They lost 2 children that day. And when I asked Dad, why did your son have the shotgun and why was it loaded? Well, I keep them loaded in the gun case. Right? In my house, we don't play that way. It's a very serious issue, and we don't understand that sexting is a very serious issue. And as Mary already said, it's like a weapon. Once the bullet is shot, you are responsible for the trajectory of that bullet. You can never get it back again. It was down in Florida where I pulled this up. Jessie Logan, an 18-year-old student in Ohio, sent sex to her boyfriend while they were dating. When they broke up, however, the former boyfriend passed the pictures along to other high school girls. Soon they were calling her vicious names and harassing her, and she couldn't stand it anymore, so she goes home. Beautiful young lady. It was on the Today Show. She goes home, doesn't tell her mom. She goes in their room, and she hangs herself, and mom comes home and finds her beautiful daughter laying there or hanging there. Okay. Same situation. A young girl, 13 years of age, down in Florida. She likes this boy, and so a friend tells her, why don't you send him a picture of your chest? And so she does. And he sends it to his friends, and they send it to another school, and she's so humiliated. She does the exact same thing. She goes home with complete, utter humiliation. 13. See, the responsibility is they don't have the cognitive wherewithal to understand the significance of this type of ordeal. And we foster that with the TV shows we've got and the movies we've got and the media that we've got is so rampant that it makes the parents look like they're ignorant and that the children are the ones in control. And the problem that I see as a chaplain, and when people come to talk to me in my counseling office, is they want to be their kid's friend. I need you to be their parent. A parent gets involved. A parent says, I would dare not talk to my dad or my mom the way I see kids talk to their dads and mom today, because we want to be hip and cool. But you are a biblical fool, the scriptures say, to treat your child as though they're an equal with you. And would sure make this woman's job a lot easier if parents would parent their children. It is your God-given right to stand up and do the hard things on the front end, so on the tail end they will smooth themselves out. But what most people want to do is they just want to be their buddy. I want to be cool. I've got 40-year-old women dressing like 18-year-old girls. Dear, get a job and get a mirror. It doesn't work. It's a very real issue, and what happens a lot of times is these kids aren't prepared for it. So Mary's absolutely correct when she says you address it head on. If you think your kid, well, I want him to be safe, that's like me giving my son who's 9 a weapon with loaded weapon saying, I just want him to be safe. Sit down, give proper instruction. Do talk to them. And listen, if you're not talking to you, it's like there's a church I used to pastor where, people would be jumping around and dancing around. I'd say, listen, if you're not dancing in your home, don't dance here. Do me a favor. You've got to be consistent in your life, and it's got to transcend not just from a religious concept, but from the relationship concept of this is what life is really all about. I've got a young girl in my office that I met with last week. Just turned 18 years of age, and since she was 11, started sexting and stuff. This is before we had the iPhones as good as they are now, and got involved with the guy. Guy was a little bit older. The guy's now serving time in a penitentiary. His life is absolutely destroyed. I know another young man whose father was a pastor, and this was his grandson. And his grandson started texting this girl, and she said that she's been abused by her father, and she lived in Alabama. So this young man, who's kind of a geeky-looking little boy, decides he's going to go protect her. And so he drives across state lines. He picks up the girl, brings her back to his pastor grandfather. He calls the police. The police come in, arrest the young boy, who kidnap charges now impending. And because they had contact, even though it wasn't sexual, he's now listed as a sexual offender. And from 19 years of age, the rest of his life, it will never leave him. Oh, it's a serious situation. Now, the laws are vague. There's good and bad about that. The good news is they're vague. The bad news is if somebody in your family, a child, sends a text or a sex picture, and that picture goes across state lines, or that picture stays in the school, that is pornography, and that is child pornography. So if my daughter is 13 years of age and she wants to impress her boyfriend by sending him a picture, what she doesn't understand is she is sending child pornography to her boyfriend. She has no right. She's 13. You understand? And both parties can be absolutely devastatingly destroyed if not dealt with from the biblical format of, listen, this is wrong. I love what Mary said at the beginning. My kids have no sacred spaces in our house except the fact that we provide food, shelter, and clothing. Their rooms are my rooms. My son said to me, he goes, Dad, you need to knock before you come into my room. I go, son, there's a scripture that says, Daddy's getting ready to crucify your flesh. And don't make me slay you in the spirit. It has been done before. You have no rights as my son except for the fact that I provide for you. And we will look at everything that's going on in your life. Because I love you enough to know what's going on in your life. It's a lot easier to sit it back and just relax, put it on cruise control. It takes a lot more effort to carry on conversation. Let's be honest, folks. We don't even communicate with our children anymore. They come in, we are tired from work, we go home, we turn on the tube, or we get on the... We do just as bad. I was going to say to you guys, I need some phone numbers so I can look up your IP address and look at what you've been looking at the last 6 months. Who wants to volunteer? I mean, let's just be authentic. This is a very real issue, and I deal with it every day in my office at the chaplain corps. The family's absolutely devastated by this. It's a great assault from the enemy. We want to protect our kids, but the very thing we want to protect them with is the very thing that's dragging them and you down. So, sexting is very serious. It's not something that we take lightly. It's something that we need to look at and deal with. I'm going to be respectful of your time because I know I'm going to go downstairs and talk to the young men as well. But I do want to tell you this. If you receive a text, or my wife and I, we banter sometimes and cut up, and if I'm out of town, she may send me something cute. I'm just being honest. That's why we have 7 children. But the reality here is, if she was to make a mistake and put one wrong digit in that number, and even a cute picture is being sent to a child, that one wrong digit can cause her character, her name. One wrong digit. And we don't even think about it. We're kicking back, we're relaxed because we're so used to them. They're like part of who we are. It's crazy. It's crazy. And then we already talked about the social media, Facebook and stuff like that. You know what we do at juvenile court? We pull up a kid, first thing we do is run to their Facebook. We can tell more about them. And what's really funny is when the parents come in, well, He's never been in trouble before. Really? Let me pull up his Facebook for you. How many parents say, well, what's that? Well, he wouldn't have put that up there. The scriptures say that you are responsible to train a child in the way he should go. You are responsible. It doesn't mean that this child is going to be perfect, but it does mean this child is going to be trained in the way he should go. And as he's growing into things, there's also got to be this epiphany of grace. One thing I learned in my own family is that when I beat down with the dictatorship of, the law of God instead of the grace of God, what I find is it pushes them further away. I had a pastor I dealt with this morning at 11:30 at Buddy's Barbecue, a prominent pastor here locally, whose son has absolutely just gone the opposite way. As a matter of fact, I informed him, you've got to be careful what you tell me, because if what you tell me is that this child has done anything with a minor, I, by law, have to report it. You understand? By law. And this pastor just doesn't know what to do. I didn't train this child to be this way. I didn't train this child. But the reality is when I talk to his boy says, Dad we never talked. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It's always interesting. Pink does a marvelous job on this when he says, you don't know what I think until I give it breath and I put my mouth around it, and the breath comes out and you hear what's in my mind by the words as it's being exchanged with you. But the beauty of that is, if we want to understand the mind of God, we see it in the Son, Christ. I want to know what God's thinking. I see a beautiful picture, wonderfully portrayed in the majestic reality of Christ. If you want to know what's in your child's mind, you got to know what's the wording of that child's mind and know empathically. Tell me what's going on. My son watched a movie the other night, some type of army movie, and we're sitting down watching it, and it got a little too intense. He goes, Dad, can we cut it off? I said, absolutely, buddy. We cut it off. And I could just tell he was nervous. I go, son, what's going on? He goes, nothing, Dad. And he goes up to his room. And so I waited about 10 minutes and went upstairs, and he's laying in his bed, and I just jumped up in the bed with him and laid down and stroking his head and said, son, his name's Samuel Shmuel. Buddy, what's going on? I'm okay, Dad. Son, you're not okay. What's going on? Dad, I don't know why people have to kill one another. Son, there's power in life and death in the tongue, and sometimes we kill one another with our words more than we kill. Folks, we've got to communicate openly and honestly. We've got to deal with the empathic reality of these are our families and our children. Okay? Now, what do we do when a child screws up? I mean, what do you do? Well, first of all, you got to understand the guidelines. Second of all, you got to say, okay, what's the best way to handle that? What we're going to do, and I talked to Judge before I came here tonight, and Mary knows this, Judge Irwin, because he was going to come and speak at one point in time. And he told me to tell you, the reality is that when kids talk back one to another, they get in this relationship, and before you know it, it's kids bantering with one another, and they don't understand the ramifications of the law. You as parents are responsible for instructing them. And what Mary even shared tonight, hey, guys, listen, this is a very serious matter. We don't play with this. This is real. This is authentic. All right? Now, we could go on, and I apologize, because really, an hour is not long enough. Something like this could take a whole weekend to really deal with. What are the signs of it? What do you see? I do want to share this with you, and then I'll dismiss here. Just 1 minute. It's the, I was going to cover a lot more scriptures with you, but I won't do that right now. The things that I want you to look for when a girl, because girls are notorious that if they've been embarrassed, they shut down. It's called entropy. It's a collapsing inward. And what happens, especially if she felt betrayed by her boyfriend, she will not even, if she's being harassed, she begins to collapse on the inside. And so some of the signs you need to note if you have a daughter, if you see things like she's withdrawn, she's isolated, she exhibits abrupt personality change, she drops out of her usual routine, whatever it is, if you see any change in that child, you better engage that child ASAP. And my encouragement, if you see that change, is to get help. Go to a pastor, go to somebody who can walk her through. It's going to be okay, let's talk about it. And she may not be willing to talk to mom or dad, but she will be willing to talk to somebody who she believes is safe. Does that make sense? Well, I had a whole lot more to share with you, and I was going to try to make you laugh, but my time is up, so it's not going to happen tonight. But I do want to tell you that we are excited about what God is doing here at Trinity. There's some things that are going on here, and we're hearing good words about you all throughout this city. I know the majority of pastors here in Knoxville. I work with them on a one-to-one basis. They're the ones who come to me to tell me what's going on in their world. So from Southern Baptist to Presbyterian to Assembly of God to Church of God to Methodist to even Catholic, there are great things being stated about this particular church and what's happening right now in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I commend you and I applaud you for the good news of the gospel. I also want to tell you that feel free. I will give you my number. You can call me anytime you want to if you have any questions, because we're going to go downstairs. But my cell number is 789-9307. 789-9307. If you can think of just Royal Chaplain Corps, you can pull us up on web. It's got our number. And if I can assist you in any way, you have any question that you want to talk about, I'd be honored to talk to you. 789-9307. And I started working for the court as a volunteer back in 2004 and came and said, Judge Garrett at the time, Judge, can I come? I'll raise the funds to be here if you allow me the privilege to work with the kids here. And so, and I got to know the employees, and every year we do a Rural Appreciation Banquet for the employees because they work so hard, and bless them. And we just really want to be a light of grace and compassion to a very dark and broken place. And I applaud Mary and all the workers at Juvenile Court. What you don't understand is they see the same stuff every single day. From mothers who say, yeah, I'd rather have my crack than my children. Please take my children. You understand? So it is the pit, the armpit of our society, and these people, these brave soldiers, are working it every day. Yes, Shah?
What about boys?
Oh, boys, same thing. Boys will still, they'll retract. Do you remember when you went into Baskin-Robbins the first time and there was 31 flavors? When it was just vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate, you walked in, you go, give me vanilla. But when it came to Baskin-Robbins, you walked in, you go, that's called an isomorphism. There's too many decisions to make and you don't know where to start. When a boy feels overwhelmed, it's like he can't even move. He becomes immobile. Even the simplest thing, saying, son, pick up your socks. You see a constant dragging down and he starts pulling back. And you see either a target of anger where he gets very angry, or you see him pull back, and when he pulls back, he just becomes almost numb. We call it a zombie approach, where they look like they just, which way do you go, Dad, right? But those are classic signs with a kid who withdraws. Anytime you see a change in behavior of a child, that should be a red flag. He's not just going, well, he's growing. No, there is something significant here. But if I don't have constant communication with my children, don't expect them to come talk to you, when they're in the pit of despair, and now you're going to be their savior, because it doesn't work. They don't trust you. So earn trust that way. Honored to be here. Thank you. I have loved this brother for years. He has been a real brother in the Lord to me. I am honored to be here. When I asked Mary, would she come, she jumped at the opportunity, said, we'd love to come and share. So thank you guys for the privilege of allowing us to be here. Grace and peace to you.